thanks so much for being with us. I'm Dan Haggerty here on Facebook Live. Kind of a special edition today. We're talking about something that has been really a big part of the news over the past week, and that's road rage. The man sitting to my left here is Dr. Carl Robinson, and he's somebody who works with people all the time on anger management. You discuss anger management as a whole with people, but you often talk to them about road rage, where it manifests sometimes behind the wheel. Before we get started, I want to kind of go over a couple of statistics, just some things that we've been dealing with not just the past week, but over the past couple of months. So this year, the first road rage shooting happened just 6 days into 2017. The second road rage shooting happened the very next day. So we got started pretty quickly with shootings attached to anger on the road within the first week or so of 2017. Since then, in February, DPD came out and said this is an issue. This is something that we've noticed, that assaults due to road rage were up 36%. Back in February, they were already at 22 cases, and we were talking about it before we went on the air here. Yeah. We're betting right now it's not 23.
No.
It's probably still growing. In April, a gun control website, okay, it's a gun control website, but it's called Trace. They reported a big spike in road rage shootings as well, saying that 620 happened nationwide in 2016. They surveyed drivers, and of the drivers they spoke to, 80% admitted within the past year to some form of aggressive driving. When you speak to people about anger, and they come in and talk to you about what triggers them, do you hear them talking to you about road rage?
They don't readily bring it up, but in the course of being in the class, eventually it comes out, because our premise is to get people to talk about where the triggers are all the way back to your childhood. And many times we'll find out that probably 90% of the people who are in our classes who come for anger is connected to road rage incidences or incidences connected with the highway and being angry.
Do they tell you why? Do they talk about what it is about being on the road?
That's interesting. They don't really know why, because when emotions are high, you don't really see it coming. And they don't know, they'll say, that's why people kick a wall. Why would you kick a wall?
Right.
What conversation did you have with the wall to make you say, I'm gonna kick you? Because you lose up to 80% of your intelligence when you're angry. The emotions and different enzymes are emitted into the brain that temporarily lower IQ. So when people get angry on the highway, it's split second. They don't really even see it coming, and they don't think that this is an extension of what happened at home or from work.
You know, a lot of people often mention that when they talk about road rage, it's somebody in a car feels like they're the only person on the road, and that there aren't actually human lives in all of the cars around them, that those are just other, cogs in their way to work or their way to anywhere else. Do you feel like that is a part of it? Did they kind of detach themselves from the people who are in the other vehicles?
I think the cognition is not there. I think the premise of understanding, and you got to go back to what people's belief system is. The premise of not understanding that your driving is not a right. It's a privilege and a responsibility. And so when you get in there, you have to understand that you're involving somebody's mother, somebody's father, somebody's children are involved. And I think we're getting away from that. Used to be a time when we looked inside ourselves to become better people. Now we look for things on the outside to become better people on the inside. So we miss a lot of growth in terms of being better people. So under stress, guess what comes out?
Sure. I've been covering a couple of these stories this week, and I talked to officers in Arlington, which is where we had one of the major cases, and they said, we've been getting a lot more calls about road rage, and we've seen criminal activity. Because road rage, yelling at somebody in the car next to you, yeah, that's road rage. You're mad and you're yelling at them. But when you drive aggressively, you cut that person off, you speed, you ride their bumper, you make things dangerous for them, that can amount to driving recklessly, causing some type of criminal activity. That's what they're seeing a spike in. Who knows why?
The other side of that is that for many, many months and for many, many years, you're seeing people just drive and not get to that point. When you're dealing with those emotions, it doesn't get better. It progresses, and that's what we're seeing, that progression.
I speculate a little bit that it's this thing. I'm talking to you right now, and I'm about to, I have to pull this up because one of the things that's great about having the Facebook Live is that you can ask us questions. You can kind of weigh in and talk to us about, what is on your mind, what kind of questions you would like him to answer or us to talk about. And in that, I'm picking up my phone in the middle of your conversation. Oh, look, I got my volume blasting. I think people are on the roads and they're using their phones, and there are more bad drivers out there. There are people that feel like, oh, this person's not paying attention, or they get cut off by somebody who's looking at an app on their phone or sending a text. Right. Are there other kind of triggers? When does this sort of thing get worse? I feel like right now it's been bad.
When we talk about it in the classes, one of the things we find out is that there's also a certain amount of complicity on the highway that people have for helping spark off people's anger, such as cutting them off, not letting them get past, pulling out in front of them. And when they honk their horn one time, you stop in the middle of the road where there's a 60-mile speed limit. Right. And so I think there's a lot of complicity to that. And that's the passive-aggressive people who aren't really going to be aggressive unless you do something to them.
This is kind of a harshly worded comment by Andy Rios. And Andy says, plenty of people get angry with driving, but only the true psychos actually act on that anger. Now, look, I'm not trying to draw some correlation between people who get angry on the road and people who pull out weapons and shoot to try and hurt or kill somebody. But I will say there was an I-Team investigation that we did recently. And the I-Team looked at 5 years of data in North Texas, and they found 800 people injured in road rage crashes in those 5 years. 800. And that's just crashes. That's not any other type of criminal activity that happened or any type of shooting crime. Crashes alone. 19 people died in those crashes. In the past year, that number was up to 362. Are we talking about 362 psychos here? Probably not.
No,
I mean, so
no,
who are the people
not.
who are susceptible to feeling that anger behind the wheel?
Mm-hmm. And in our classes, there's people who are going through things and are struggling with marriages and relationships. And again, it progresses over. So no, I don't think that it's about just psychos. I think it's the average John, the average anybody who's struggling with those emotions is going to end up with behavior on that highway. And, not everything is a wreck in terms of some of the mass shootings, the shootings that we've had. I think that's where we got to, and I think we're going to see more of that coming. But it doesn't mean people, because of behavioral health issues and because of the way people think about the highway, I think we're going to continue to see that happen. But I think as it progresses, the point I want to make is that we end up where we were the first part of this week with shootings, and it goes further than that, ramming people, pushing people off the highway, even in the trucking industry and stuff. That goes on a regular basis. Truckers are running people off the highways.
And it's due to anger, road rage, things they're taking from their lives and bringing into the car with them.
No patience. It's a life skill that people don't have. Communication skills. I'd rather give you the high heavenly five than to just wave at you and say it's okay.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about what we have seen in the past week, and a little bit further back actually, but primarily there. We'll start in Arlington, and we're going to listen to some sound from some of the people who were involved in these incidents. In Arlington was the first major one. There was a 19-year-old, Dylan Spade. He had his girlfriend in the truck with him. He was leaving work. He picked her up. They were on their way to the family house. He was involved in some type of argument with another vehicle over merging, they believe. And the person in the other vehicle pulled out a gun and shot him. The bullet hit him in the head. His girlfriend had to grab the wheel, drift off the road, crashed. She has a big gash over her head with stitches in it. We spoke to her after this all happened. Let's listen here.
I'm begging them to just come forward. I know it's not easy, I know it's not hard, but family, friends are begging to that person that was in the passenger seat, come forward.
This video right here, that's the vehicle of interest, okay? So it's that black low profile, looks like a luxury vehicle, maybe a BMW. That's the one they're looking for right now, and from what I understand, they've passed this on to the FBI to try and enhance that video, find that license plate. But still no arrest in that case. And I love the way she said it, and I'm not sure if it was a slip of the tongue or whatever, but she goes, it's not easy, or she goes, it's not hard, it's not easy, or something like that. And it's right, it's not easy, it's not hard. It's not easy to turn yourself in for something like that, but it's also not hard either to make the call and do the right thing.
Right.
Moving forward, it wasn't long after that, I interviewed a girl who was traveling home on I-30 from Arkansas. She was with her boyfriend and his family. They were coming back late at night. A car started tailing them, was following them, not right behind them, but in the rear view for about an hour. When they got a little closer to DFW, that car got on their tail and then passed quickly, firing a shot that went through their back window. A piece of fragment from that bullet went through her headrest and skinned the top of her head. And she got shot in the head and needed 2 staples to close that wound. We talked to her too. Listen here.
We heard the bang, and then I pulled over really fast, and I saw the same car that was following us just keep going. They didn't brake, they didn't stop.
She's 17 years old, and that's a kid. That's a kid who's having to face that sort of thing. She said she's leaning on her faith, and that's what's getting her through it, and that she doesn't have any ill will toward that person or people who are involved. But you notice that we aren't speaking about them directly because we have no idea who they are. Here she is in the hospital with a big grin on her face, but also a pretty dramatic rap on her head. So as it manifests again, just when we thought there's no way this can keep going, wow, these are 2 really major stories. The next morning, North Richland Hills. Guy pulls into a Waffle House parking lot late at night, leaning on the horn. He had been shot after a road rage incident through the arm. We talked to both him on the radio. Our news partners at KRLD got an interview with him, and we spoke to the man in the Waffle House who ran out and put a tourniquet on his arm to stop the bleeding. Listen here.
All I remember is seeing a flash. I couldn't really get a good look at him. The window was shattered. When I had, finally looked over, it had already, my arm was already bleeding and I'd already been shot.
He was more worried about getting the bleeding stopped, but once you put a tourniquet on, the bright red bleeding stops and you're done.
Thankfully, that guy had some training, was able to stop the bleeding and make sure that he got safely to the hospital and taken care of. It's just the arm, but there are some pretty important things in there too that can cause you to bleed a lot. So as we move forward here, these are all incidents that involve weapons. Is that something you have seen, or that you have seen data showing that is starting to infiltrate these road rage situations?
Yeah, I have. As a matter of fact, we wrote a book on it called The Best Anger Journal that was written on my classes, where we've seen people who actually came in who had for issues with anger and domestic violence somehow connected, and they had actually put a gun to their head prior to coming to the class. So yeah, we saw a lot. There is a correlation of that.
How can someone, and I know you can't answer this, we don't know, we can't put ourselves in the minds of these people. How can someone take it to that level? We've all had our adrenaline pumping in the car. We live in DFW. There's traffic all the time. There are construction zones left and right. Everybody has run late for something and had somebody sitting in the left lane or cut them off when they merge, right? We've all had that happen. How can people transition that into something so violent and with such a lack of care for life? Have you been able to touch on any of that in the people that you work with or talk to?
Yeah, we do. And they come back and they say, I don't know what I was thinking.
Really?
Or I wished I wasn't thinking. Or, gosh, I never thought it'd come to that. And I don't think people get on the highway and wake up and say, I'm going to do some road rage today. I think that not having the skill set to deal with the pressures, not having the ability to deal with my own emotions without taking me into that behavior. So the emotions by themselves are not the culprit. It's that behavior that puts the rubber to the road.
What do people do? What do you do? I mean, aside from going to a class, what can people do at home? I mean, if you are somebody who gets angry, if you're somebody who routinely, because everybody has that person in their life, and if you're watching, you know who you are, or you know if the person sitting next to you is that person, that they get mad when they drive. They just do. You know those people. What can they do to calm down before something escalates, before they find themselves in a dangerous situation?
That's really great. That's really it's called IED, intermittent explosive disorder, which means you go from 0 to 10, just like that. And I think people do that because they don't have the skill set. One of the things that you can do on the highway is be intentional when you get behind that wheel. When you get behind that wheel, determine that where I'm going is only half of what I'm going to enjoy. I'm going to enjoy the trip. You can put your selection of music. We're talking about emotional intelligence we teach in the classes. Put your choice of your best music and intend to get in that car, that vehicle, and have a safe trip, have a safe journey. I think those are some things that we can do, because when you mellow it out and you listen to your favorite music, it really takes you out of the genre of the struggle and the stressors. So removing stressors is key.
What about people who find themselves engaging with somebody who's going through some type of anger situation. We're also not perfect drivers. Nobody is. And you've accidentally done things before that were your bad.
Yeah, my bad. Right.
And you turn around, you see the guy behind you or the woman behind you, and they're not ready to accept that apology so quickly.
Right.
What's the mode? What do you do?
A couple of things that you can do. Number one, when they come up behind you and blow, don't get on your brakes, because that's tit for tat, and that's responding to a very negative behavior. So one of the things that I always do when I accidentally cut
What do you mean? The brake check, right? Is that what you're referring
when
to?
People are going 60 miles an hour and you tap your horn, and all of a sudden they just stop in the middle of the highway.
Sure.
Automatically know that you have a problem there. And you know what I do? Whenever I do something, I throw my hands up and say, hey, my bad, I'm sorry, thank you. And I smile. It diffuses the issue. But I think that when you pull up behind somebody and they slam their brakes on, just pull around them and go on, because if you don't know what you're escalating or what they have in that vehicle.
And that's kind of what we've been seeing lately, is that people, they don't know the lengths that the other person is willing to go to. And by no means am I casting any blame on the situation, but the case in Arlington, the 19-year-old driver, during the altercation, he flipped the middle finger to the other guy, and the other guy returned with gunfire.
Yes.
And I think it comes back to what you were saying before is, now, again, I'm not trying to draw a correlation between typical road rage and somebody capable of murder, but you never know quite what the other person is going through in their mind, or what's going on in their car, or what is in their car when you find yourself into one of these situations.
No, you never know. And that's why you have to be very careful, because you don't know what kind of day, what kind of week or life that these people are having.
So I was looking back in some of our stories in our iNews system, which is basically all of our scripts. You can search by day, month, and you can put in keywords and see what we did. I just went back each month and typed in road rage, and you better believe there was a story every month, if not multiple stories. And this is something that I found that we did a while back, and this is some tips that were given to us by police for people dealing with road rage. And they said, plenty of time, give yourself plenty of time to get from A to B, right? So you don't find yourself with that nervous, I'm late kind of feeling. They say always use your blinker. Don't, which this sounds like common sense stuff, but this is the sort of stuff that triggers people on the road. They say don't drive slow in the left lane.
That's what they said in my classes. They just burn me up because you're driving slow.
I'm not road rage. I don't ever have road rage.
Does it bother you?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And you always end up passing the person on the right, and you look over, and you can tell they have no idea what they're doing. They're just sitting there cluelessly in the left lane. You know, they say if you find yourself on the receiving end, police say to slow down. Let angry drivers pass you. Don't make eye contact. If you can't get away from a driver, don't stop. And they say to call 911. And I think that hands up kind of thing, like, hey, I'm sorry, kind of like one of those, is universal for my bad.
Yeah, I've done it a couple of times myself.
You're right, I'm wrong, you know?
Right, and most people accept that. In the cases of lunatics, they don't accept anything. They're there to do some harm and do some hurt. But even in my classes, you know, people say, you know, I'm starting to get a little bit better because I wasn't aware. And I think the awareness of what you're doing on that highway keeps you cognitive enough to not push you to those edges.
Yeah. Just a couple of other pieces of video that really made air this week from other places around the country. One is in Arizona, and this is a shot that somebody got from the dash cam of their car. I mean, the guy pulls over, gets out of his car, punches a man through the window of his vehicle, and when he gets back in, you'd think, hey, is this other guy going to take it? No. He comes out with what appears to be a tire iron, smashes the back of the guy's car. You talk about you don't know what lengths the other person's willing to go to. And when that guy came out with that tire iron, he had no idea what lengths maybe the other guy was willing to go back to. Possibly, maybe he did have a firearm in the car. You don't know. It just seems like we have all of these incidents to learn from, yet people still find themselves now at an alarming growth rate, finding themselves involved in these road rage situations still. And then the last piece of video, which really caught me off guard a little bit, was this one from Los Angeles. And not really because of what happens here at the beginning, but you see the guy swerve, right? He hits the median, but then he comes back into traffic, and he hits this truck.
Oh, wow.
And the truck flips. Okay.
Yeah, didn't even see it coming.
All right. So it started with a motorcyclist who thought that he had been cut off on the road. He retaliated by kicking the vehicle.
Right.
That guy swerved into him, and it caused this chain reaction. Well, it made me think about my family, right? My wife and I have twin sons.
Oh, wow.
And they're 8 months old, and they sit in the back seat. And sometimes we'll be driving home from somewhere, and they'll be wailing to high heavens. And what calms them down is their little binky.
Okay. Yeah.
So my wife will take her belt off, and she'll go back like this, and she'll reach and she'll get the binky, and she'll pop them in the mouth.
Binkies work.
They work great. But if we were in that truck, and my wife was leaning into the back, and a car came out of nowhere and sideswiped us on the highway, who knows, right?
Exactly.
And that all comes from a motorcyclist who's mad that he wasn't given the right of way.
Wasn't respected.
Is that it? Is respect is that the thing people feel like they're not respected?
I think they're not respected. I think two things: the accessibility of getting a firearm simply predisposes people to use it because it's there for an emotional feeling of either safety or either control, right?
Well,
so it's easy
I don't want to make it a debate about gun gun ownership.
Absolutely
at
not.
all.
But
maybe what you're saying is if somebody is more inclined to suffer from anger management issues, if they know that they're the type of person that can be susceptible to extreme road rage, maybe it wouldn't be smart to have a weapon nearby.
Yeah, I would say that because the biggest weapon that you can use was the water balloon. People get water ballooned all over the country. Right. So I think they reach and get whatever they're predisposed to get.
What do you tell people if you know somebody in your life who might be one of those road rage drivers, the husband or the wife or the son or the brother who sits next to a friend or something, and they've seen them get irritated and angry and yell and scream and lay on the horn and brake check people and swerve, give them a little check and stuff like that. How do you start that conversation?
In the classes, how do I start the conversation? First of all, I introduce myself and say, hey, tell me why you're taking this class. Why are you here? When I determine why they're here to take the class, first thing I determine is, tell me who you are. When people tell me who they are, then I know what they believe. Then I know how to begin the class.
Well, some of the people don't want to be in your classes, right? Like the court tells them they have to come to your class or their job does, right?
Surprisingly, 90+% of the people who come to my classes are proactive folk. Either they blew up on the job or they blew up and scared their children or their wife ordered. Before you yell at me one more time, you go get some help. So we get probably 90+% of our people are proactive folk who have made some mistakes and who are trying to correct it. I think that's being proactive. Correct it before it becomes a real issue.
Should I guess what I'm saying is should people who know they might have, because a lot of times people
they
won't face their own issues. They
That's
won't admit to having a problem.
Everybody who comes to a class saying, I'm not angry, I don't have an anger problem.
I don't know why I'm here.
But that's what they all say. At the end of the day, find out that maybe you don't have an emotional problem, but you got a behavior problem. And we want to help you change your behavior by helping define your emotions. What emotions should you really be having? Should you be ticked off because somebody ran you off the highway or cut you off? Should you really take that to the place that you want to affect somebody's life? In the classes, we see a lot of that, and we see people go back and say, through the cognition, I think I can change, I can do things differently. And I think everybody needs to go take a class to get a little bit better. I think everybody could use a life skills class to help them redefine some things, and that's what those classes do.
Yeah, and I think that, when you think about living here in DFW. It's a growing area. There are millions of people. There are always going to be roads that are getting built, new communities that are popping up, and more traffic, and more bad drivers. I mean, it's a way of life. It's until everybody's sitting behind those automated vehicles.
That's the ways off, though. I mean, man,
it's not going to be for us. Maybe my twins. I think people need to accept the fact that they have to be responsible for themselves. And take a little bit of responsibility in controlling yourself on the road.